This is another edition of Between the Ropes on Sports War Radio.
Boy Green here with you, and we've got a special guest joining us on the phone lines, a radio personality, former color commentator, and former professional wrestler, TAZ, joining us on the show. TAZ, thank you so much for taking the time, my man.
My pleasure. What's going on?
Well, first off, TAZ, the main reason that I've known you from my childhood, and many do for that matter, is because of that pro wrestling career, and you got to achieve a ton of highs, multiple championships. I just want to ask you to start things off, what was the proudest moment of your career?
That's a tough question. I've been fortunate to get a lot of opportunities, and it was a lot of work. I would say one of the things that jump out to me right away that I'll never forget was getting to have my debut for the WWE in my hometown at Madison Square Garden against Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle. So that for me was like an amazing opportunity. And also in Florida, winning my first World Heavyweight Championship before I went to WWE, and that was in ECW against the franchise Shane Douglas. So those two things jump out to me big time.
Well, I got to get some of my nerdy wrestling questions out of the way, and then we can jump into other topics here. Who was the best wrestler you ever faced?
Oh wow, these are tough ones because there's a lot of good guys, great guys I've wrestled. You said toughest or best?
How about both?
I would say physically toughest. It's tough. I've wrestled a lot of tough guys. Physically tough, and what I consider physically tough means how much punishment someone can sustain and keep on ticking. And that's a guy named Sabu. So Sabu, for me, was probably the most physically tough. As far as rugged and physicality, I would say the late, great Bam Bam Bigelow was a guy who was ultra tough and could really beat the snot out of you. I can't just name one. As far as ability, pure technique and ability, along with toughness, would be Kurt Angle. So those, just to name a few. Hardcore Holly, Bob Holly's another guy who's a very tough guy. I've wrestled many times in WWE. Those would be probably the top four guys, I would say.
And then after the wrestling career, you transitioned into the booth with some WWE commentary. Was that transition smooth for you?
No, not right away. It was hard, but WWE, namely Vince McMahon and stuff, worked with me a lot. A guy named Kevin Dunn, the senior executive vice president for WWE TV programming. Being that I live in New York, I wasn't far from Connecticut where the TV studio was. Therefore, I would do a lot of practice matches and stuff. And guys like Michael Cole and good old JR, Jim Ross, they worked with me behind the scenes when I was new. It was hard. It's a very hard gig because you have a short amount of time. It's not like calling a football game or a baseball game where you have longer periods of time to tell your stories and get your points across and accentuate what you're watching in the game or the match. When you call pro wrestling or WWE on TV, Raw, SmackDown, whatever, most matches are 6 to 8 minutes, so that's quick. You got a lot of work to do in that short span, and you got to promote what's coming up later. So that was hard for me, just learning. But I was fortunate enough to be in WWE for just about a decade and be a broadcaster for a lot of years and called a lot of WrestleManias and then segued into TNA and broadcasting.
Yeah, and with that being said, did you always say to yourself that wrestling, once you got into the business and industry of wrestling, that's what you're going to remain in? Did things get stale and you wanted to try something new? What was kind of your mentality there?
No, I didn't want to be an announcer. I tore my bicep, and then I had an old neck injury that kept bothering me while I was working for WWE, and Vince McMahon had said to me himself, he goes, listen, I think you have potential to do good here and do a really good job as a commentator, and we're going to work with you. And I'm like, I don't really want to do it. He goes, buddy, you're not getting any younger, and your body's beat up, and I'm giving you an opportunity of a young family to extend your career. And I said, you're right. When I talked to my wife, she's like, he's right. Listen to him. And and then I embraced it. So initially, I thought I would just wrestle like forever, but injuries piled up, and I had this opportunity. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to segue out of, in-ring into the broadcast booth.
And then next thing you know, you're doing sports talk radio. How did that initially come about?
Well, yeah, that didn't really happen overnight. A lot of folks might think that maybe haven't followed my career in the past 4 years or so. See, what happened was, man, like 3 years ago, I left TNA and came to CBS Radio Digital Department here in Manhattan in New York City. and I was doing a podcast which rapidly segued into a daily show called the TAZ Show, where I was covering wrestling mostly, but I also was covering sports. It's called the TAZ Show, Body Slams and Beyond. And I've done over 500 episodes of that TAZ Show, and I still do them now, mostly as a podcast, like 2 or 3 days a week, covering wrestling. What happened was the big bosses at CBS Sports Radio and CBS, now Entercom, as you know, said, hey, this guy is covering sports. He and Moose know each other. Moose has been on Taz's show. Taz has been a guest on Moose's Saturday show that he used to have on CBS Sports Radio. And the rest is history. So that's how it happened. It segued out of me doing CBS digital stuff like video streaming and podcasting for 3 years into Taz and the Moose on CBS Sports Radio every morning at 6 a.m. Eastern.
Did you watch any old radio shows? Did you kind of come up with your own style when you knew that when you got into sports talk radio, the podcasting, and normal radio? Did you just try to come up with your own style on a day-to-day basis, or did you look at any of your contemporaries?
Listen, I'm not an overnight sensation in radio. I can humbly tell you that. I have been inspired by many people, mostly in New York radio, from Howard Stern to Mike Francesa, to what Boomer and Carton were doing, now Boomer and Gio. I have always wanted to get in radio. While I was in SmackDown, in WWE, calling SmackDown years ago, I was trying to get into radio, and I was doing different tryout shows. So this is something I've been doing, sprinkled in my life quietly for a lot of years. So once the podcast happened, which turned into a daily show, the Taz Show, for 3 years, I started to get my sea legs under me, and it segued into what Moose and I do now. So it was a long journey, longer than people know. People just think it just happened, like out of nowhere. That's not true.
No, I'm glad for the clarification, because from people that I've talked to about the new show, people have said, man, Taz must have just bing, boom, bam, snap his fingers, and then he was doing a new show. So,
Oh, no, not so fast. That did happen. I promise you that. No, if you remember when Howard Stern went over to Sirius Radio, they had the Howard Stern channel. They still have it, I believe, at Sirius. And what happened was they were looking for programming for that. And I'm going back, dude, like it's got to be, I don't know, maybe a little bit less than 15 years. I don't know, 12 years. Not bad, but years. And Michael Cole and I were the announce team for SmackDown. And Michael Cole had a history in radio before he got into wrestling. And then we were doing stuff for Sirius Radio on the Howard Stern channel when Howard just went to Sirius. I'm talking about like he was there a month. So that's how long ago I was doing radio. Then, if you remember, I don't know, you probably don't, you might, but CBS Radio and Infinity then was doing something called Free FM. And Free FM was a format that didn't last. That was just guy talk, basically. And I was doing shows in the overnight here in New York City while I was working for WWE. I didn't have a full-time show, but I was sprinkled in doing shows all over. So this has been a long time coming for me. You know, I know how radio is. You got to pay your dues, and I kind of have, quietly. I really have. I humbly say that.
We're speaking with pro wrestler and podcaster Taz from the new CBS Sports Morning radio show, Taz and the Moose, and let's continue on here. So you've been doing the show now a couple weeks. How have you been working out the kinks? How has the relationship been with Moose?
Great. Mark Malusis is a true pro. For most that know him, he's covered, just sports for years, and his work on TV, on SNY, and all his work on WFAN here in New York City, a guy who's really been a journeyman, who's a producer on the world-famous Mike and the Mad Dog many years ago here in New York, obviously, and Moose paid his dues, came up, has done so many shows for so long, and I'm honored to work with a guy like Moose. I got to tell you, a lot of people thought we were going to hit a lot of potholes in the beginning and get our chemistry together. It didn't take that long because we knew each other, and like I said, he's been on my show before. My show was done, again, 2 hours every day, and I had Moose come in sometimes and do a full show with me. So, only people that were hearing it were people that are true wrestling fans that followed me. But yet, we were getting our chemistry, so kind of a little covert operation, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I was going to ask you that, the behind the scenes. So once they realized that you were a special talent and they wanted you to get a radio show, was it pretty simple, bing, boom, bam, it was going to be you and Moose doing this radio show?
Well, then it had some different folks that I had worked with, Robert Flores. I'd done some shows with Robert, and then also Robin Lundberg, who I think Robin now is doing a Saturday show on CBS Sports Radio, which is awesome for Robin. No, it wasn't just bing, bang, boom. Nothing in life is bing, bang, boom. Nothing that is worth anything or that you've earned is bing, bang, boom. I could tell you this. Nothing in my career has ever been bing, bang, boom. I wish.
Yeah.
But like I said, not to be redundant, I've been with the company for 3 years on the digital side doing, and I've done a lot of programming in live streaming, video, and podcasting. So all under the banner of CBS before Entercom purchased it.
So if you had to describe your radio style and you had to describe Moose's, do you guys complement each other very well?
Yes, because Moose is he's a nuts and bolts guy, where I'm more of a free spirit on the air. So we kind of keep each other in our lanes, and we kind of give you that balance. I'm a big personality, and Moose is a snarky, sarcastic, funny guy. He's got a drier sense of humor where I kind of come right at you with it. We have a lot of fun on our show. We cover sports in detail. We're not going to throw a zillion stats at you and bore you with that. We're going to give you entertainment. We're going to wake you up in the morning, and we're going to talk sports with you. And when people call the show, we embrace them, callers, and sometimes we argue with them. Sometimes we debate with each other. We don't always get along. So, I wouldn't change one thing that Taz and the Moose that's going on with us, with myself and Mark Palusis right now. I'm very proud of what we're doing in the early goings here, and I wouldn't change nothing. I'm happy with everything the way it's going, with our producer Mike and our board up Pete, our team, everything we're doing, our update guys, Andrew Bogus. If you listen to the show, I mean, we're full throttle coming right at you every morning. We don't play games.
Well, Taz, before I get you out of here, last thing is just looking ahead for Taz and the Moose in the future. Do we have any sneak peek, guests, big things popping, some things bubbling and being ready for the future? What's the future for Taz and the Moose now that we're just at the beginning?
Right. We got guests every day, different guests. I think we got Bill Cowell coming on, former coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously. Tomorrow, I believe, he's coming on. The other day we had Terrell Davis on. I mean, we got... we had London Fletcher on yesterday. Yesterday we had also Tony Baselli on from the Jaguars. We always have guests, and we do different segments where we have fun. We introduced a brand new segment today called BCS, which was a lot of fun, and which we're going to do every week. So we do different interactive segments where folks could call in or interact with us on our Twitter account or Instagram account. So we're very active on social media also with Taz and the Moose.
Taz, I want to thank you so much. We really appreciate it, bud. Best of luck in the future, my man.
All right, Horst, I appreciate it. Thanks, man.